Paolo Speziale, and welcome to the A-List. The guest today is the Vice President of the Chicago Film Critics Association and a writer for efilmcritic.com. I would like to welcome my guest, Erik Childress. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So how did you get started as a film critic? What got you interested in critiquing films?
Well, I mean, I started off back in high school making my own films, and I went to college here at Columbia downtown to study film and screenwriting and that kind of thing. And one day I just happened to call into the Jonathan Brandmeier radio show. They were looking for someone to review movies on their show every Friday, and I fulfilled that role for about the next 4 years. And then that attracted me to efilmcritic.com and to Nick DiGilio on WGN Radio, and I've been doing it ever since.
Man. So what distinguishes a good film from a bad one for you?
Good film from a bad film. It's an interesting question because I think every critic kind of has their own sort of set of, some critics look at story, some look at characters, some look at sometimes an overall meaning to the story. I look at all of those kind of things. A good story will grab me, but then you start, trickling down, you're trying to find, are the characters interesting? Is the writing solid? Is the acting good? All these little things, add up to a whole. And, sometimes it can be as simple as, if it's a comedy, am I laughing, a great deal throughout the movie? And that can just mean a good movie.
All right. So can it sometimes be difficult critiquing a film? Like, can there be like a film that's like bad acting, but you like the meaning, or vice versa?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you sort of wrestle with those, the good and the bad and kind of thing, and that you get sort of the typical mixed review sometimes, like you said, like the writing is pretty good, but this performance didn't really fit the material, or there was an overall meaning to the film that you kind of saw, but the filmmakers didn't quite pull it off. So you just kind of wrestle, with, is this film worth recommending to people? Is it kind of an interesting failure, or is it worth, just kind of a pass kind of thing? So
yeah, what do you use as like a rating system? Do you use like stars?
I use sort of a traditional 0 to 4 star method. At the eFilm Critic we have a 5-star system, but I'm sort of a traditionalist, and I sort of go with the 4-star system.
All right, that's cool. So what exactly is the Chicago Film Critics Association, and how did you get started there?
Well, I got started with the Chicago Film Critics Association. The president, still president to this day, Dan Geyer, who writes for the Daily Herald. I used to send him clippings and stuff. I used to send him my writings even before I was writing for eFilm Critic. And we happened to meet, and he just kept asking me to send him my stuff. And next thing you know, a year later, I'm in the Film Critics Association, and several years down the road, he liked the direction that I brought to the organization, and my sort of drive to sort of improve the organization to a standing that we really wanted to have in the city. And he asked me to be vice president, and I've been that for several years now. So what does
the CFCA actually do?
Well, the CFCA, it does several things. I mean, we act within the interest of the film critics in the organization. We try to deal with studios and the local publicists to make sure that they're getting into screenings, and we try for equal treatment for critics. Sometimes they're obviously, you have like Roger Ebert and whatnot, so you have critics that have a lot more cachet in this town. Sometimes they get some earlier access, and the Chicago Tribune also. So we try to balance that. But we also were trying, for several years, we try to just bring the idea of film within the communities, and sort of reach out for different programs, and have discussions and Q&As and things like that. These are kind of things that not always easy to do, but things that we have developing and are continuing to develop.
Okay. So who are the members of the CFCA, and how do you become a member?
Well, to become a member of CFCA, you have to be you have to be a paid writer within the city, whether it be radio, television. You don't even necessarily have to be a writer, but as long as you're contributing to the discussion of film as a reviewer on radio, television, or online, or print newspaper. So you start with that, and then we have 54 members, I believe, currently in the organization from all facets of the film critic community.
All right, that's pretty cool, actually. So how did you get to your position as vice president?
Like I said, Dan Geyer, asked me. He just liked. So, I was always sort of at the forefront of trying to bring sort of an equality to film, for all the film critics, especially for myself. And he liked that drive and that interest that I had in bringing everyone together as a community, and he asked me because he liked having me as his right-hand man.
So how did he get his position?
He's one of the founders, actually.
Oh, really?
The CFCA was founded in 1988, and he was one of the founding members even before Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert even became members. They became members a few years later. So yeah, he's been around since the very beginning.
Wow. So say I start out as like a writer and then I join the CFCA. Can I work my way up to a higher position?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. We don't really have elections as far as the board members. We just sort of have a general board right now of 7 people who sort of decide and vote on things. Who's going to become a new member. Our members, our current members, fulfilling their obligations as a CFCA member. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely aspire to work your way up, but we don't necessarily have elections that year in and year out. We just sort of had a board that sort of overlooks everything.
Okay, so all right, so there's no this guy's really good, let's all just vote for him to be
right. There's no voting thing, but if we see someone that has is an upstanding member of the film community and seems to be interested in joining the ranks, so to speak, we then sort of we would invite them to become a part of the board if, say, someone were to step down.
Okay. So what are the Chicago Film Critics Awards, and what are you awarding them for?
Well, we award them, every, just like the Academy Awards, every Film Critics Association throughout the country has their own, sort of version of the Film Awards for the previous years. And for several years, back in around the late 90s and early part of this century, the Chicago Film Critics had an award show, and we had them at Navy Pier, and we had a celebrity guest. People would come in to pick up their awards and whatnot, and that kind of fell off over the last decade. But last year we revived the award show, and we had James Earl Jones there, we had George Lucas there, we had Jason Segel picked up an honorary comedy award for the Muppets. So we're looking to expand upon that and hopefully continue this tradition of this award show, because we do like awarding obviously the best of the year.
Yeah, so you award them like the Oscars,
like the Oscars. We have our own trophies, beautifully designed trophies. Some of you can see actually on the CFCA website. And we want them to come in and accept their awards, obviously, and we've been very successful over the years in getting them to do that.
Okay, does the CFCA branch out and I know it's called the Chicago Film Critics Association, but does it branch out to other states, or do they all have their own?
No, you have to. One of the other qualifications to be a member of the CFCA is to have a working base within the Chicago film community. You can't necessarily be in Indiana or Wisconsin. You have to have a sort of a home base within Chicago and sort of its neighboring counties.
Okay, so can you tell me about the CFCA charity wing? And what sort of charities are there in the wing? Because I was reading about them online.
Well, the charities is one of the things that we're working to expand upon. There are charities that we had back even well before I even became a member. This is one of the things that we're a nonprofit organization, so we look to we put on events over the years that have raised money for various causes. So many of them happened before I became a member, but this is one of the several programs now that we are expanding that we're looking to revive.
Okay, so what kind of charities are you thinking of getting involved in?
I'm not
sure
a part of. Yeah,
okay.
So that's not my wing.
So you're also a writer for efilmcritic.com. How did you get started there? You were saying you right out of high school?
Well, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't eFilm Critic. I didn't become a writer there until after I started reviewing stuff on the Brandmeier show, the radio show. And the eFilm Critic, I was looking for, I was writing stuff on my own and looking for places on, internet. This is sort of really when the internet was really starting to become a viable, institution for up and coming writers. And eFilm Critic was a new site that started in 1998. And they're looking for writers. They weren't paying writers at the time, but they were just looking for people to contribute film reviews. And I submitted some samples, and they liked what I did, and I started writing for them, and I improved my craft over the years writing for them, and I continue. So I'm an editor of the site now. All
right. So you had all 3 going then.
Yeah, I had radio and writing, and just recently I added television to my resume.
So I have to ask you, what are your favorite and least favorite films because you're a film critic?
Just types of films or specific films?
Just specific films.
Specific films. Well, if you ask me what my favorite movie of all time is, it's Back to the Future.
Okay.
That's Back to the Future. E.T. is a film that E.T. is the film that sort of made me realize that whatever I was going to do, whether I was going to be making films or watching films for a living, E.T. was the film that made me go, oh, that's what movies can do to you. So that was a transcendent moment in my life when I was 7 years old.
All right. What about your least favorite movie?
Least favorite movies? There are so many.
Yeah.
There are so many. Battleship.
Battleship?
No, Battleship is just, or the What to Expect When You're Expecting. We're just, obviously
Exactly.
the most recent least favorite movies. But there are so many, and I don't think I have my absolute least favorite movie. I've never really given it that much thought. But if you name certain films, I can definitely tell you whether I hate them or not.
So there's no movie that's like in your heart, like
the
you're
worst
just like,
film
oh
I've
my
ever
God.
seen. No, because it could be different. It could be different from month to month. I hate them for different reasons, and and it's usually something that is either so terribly made. With no thought and there's just nothing going for it, or something that is just sort of offensively bad.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for the show today. I'd like to thank you, Erik, for being here. I'm Paolo Speziale. See you next time.